Okay, welcome back, IB macroeconomics students, to this video lecture. Today we're going to be going over the components of aggregate demand. Okay, so we have gone over in our last video what the curve for macro demand, okay, which is also called aggregate demand, AD curve, looks like. But why is it like this, and what are the components of aggregate demand? Okay, so when calculate aggregate demand, there's a few things we have to consider. Okay, there's a few components we have to consider. The components of AD are as followed. Okay, the components of AD are as followed. So firstly, we have household spending and demand for the good from households. Secondly, we have investors, the demand of the good from investors. Okay, so maybe oil, we will have both households and investors demanding oil. The third component of aggregate demand is demand from governments, so government spending and public services. We also have NUCs, we have exports of goods and services, so exports of goods and services, of course, minus the imports. Okay, so if we put all of these together, we will get the components of aggregate demand. Now, what are the components? Okay, so household spending and demand for the good, I'm going to give it as an abbreviation of C. Okay, so household consumption, so domestic household consumption. For the demand of good from investors, I'm going to give it I. For government spending, I'm going to give it G. For exports minus imports, I'm going to give it X. Okay. X minus M. So X minus M is going to be exports minus imports. X minus M. Okay, so these are the components of aggregate demand, that of which contributes to the total demand of a good that is experienced within the economy, and these, of course, is very, very similar to the GDP. Remember how GDP is calculated: household spending, government spending, investment spending, export minus imports. So AD curve is really, really similar to that. And if I was to concise it into one single formula, it would be AD equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So aggregate demand equals C plus I plus G, C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, so that would be the aggregate demand formula. That would be the formula you want to use in order to calculate aggregate demand. Now, it's very similar. Okay, so you take the domestic demand for the good plus the investment demand for the government and expand plus the export minus import demand for the good. And there we will have the aggregate demand curve. Now, once again, why does aggregate demand curve shift? Okay, why does aggregate demand increase and why does the aggregate demand fall? Okay, now, of course, there would be times at which aggregate demand increases. There will also be times where aggregate demand fall. Now, we have to be able to tell, why is that the case? What causes aggregate demand to fall and what causes aggregate demand to increase? So I'm going to use this diagram right here to sort of explain and also to sort of like clear. Okay. Fall in AD. Okay, the fall in AD could be caused by fall in net exports. So the first is fall in net exports. So perhaps other countries may be setting embargoes, maybe setting tariffs, maybe setting protectionary measures to stop the import of goods. So the exporting country will suffer because they are unable to export the goods to other countries, and that is a real life situation to how aggregate supply of a good may fall, leading to real GDP to decrease in some cases. The second reason for fall in aggregate demand is caused by the cut in the real life government spending. Okay. Cut in government spending. So these are just some examples of ways or reasons behind why aggregate demand may actually decrease. But a cut in government spending is indeed a very common reason why Perhaps government subsidies are being withheld, perhaps government grants and bailouts are being withheld, leading to aggregate demand to not increase or actually decrease. Another monetary policy and fiscal policy that may cause the demand in aggregate demand is higher interest rates. Higher interest rates and fall in the supply of credit, or fall in the supply of credit, both of which will lead to a decrease in supply of circulating cash flow, of course leading to less money being circulated, leading to aggregate demand to decrease. Now that's of course a fiscal policy, so there are expansionary policies and contractionary fiscal policies, and a great example of a contractionary fiscal policy is the decreasing of interest rates. This decline of household wealth, / income is also another contributing factor for aggregate demand. Now, often a reason for the decline in household wealth and income is often due to unemployment. Okay, so when people have unemployed, they have less money, they have less disposable income, leading to the fall in aggregate demand. Now, what are some factors that will cause aggregate demand to increase in AD? Now, there are also going to give 4 examples. The first example is depreciation in the value of exchange rates. So first, depreciation of the value of exchange rates. Okay. So for example, it will be cheaper for a foreign currency to be converted to a currency, which is maybe due to the depreciation of the value of exchange rate, leading for foreign investments or foreign bought goods within the company within the country to increase. So the exports will increase, leading to an increase in aggregate demand. That's one example. Another example is cuts in rate and indirect taxes, cuts in direct and indirect taxes. So this is, of course, another monetary and fiscal policies that government may use in order to increase the money supply, which is an expansionary fiscal policy, to increase the money supply within the economy, to increase the money supply, leading to consumers to have more money, which of course causes the aggregate demand to shift more and for aggregate demand to actually increase. So that's the cuts in direct and indirect taxes. A third reason why aggregate demand may increase is increases in level of house prices and share prices. Now that's not really important. I'm just going to skip through it. The first one is expansionary supply of credit and lower interest rates. Okay, so increase in supply of credit and lower interest rates. Now, this is, of course, another fiscal policy that governments really like to use in order to increase the money flow and within the economy, and to actually cause more money to be circulating, and therefore with more money circulating, real GDP increases and as correlated, the price decreases. So I hope this video is helpful in outlining the components of aggregate demand, explanation and the graph. Also going over components in the fall and the rise, fall and the increase of aggregate demand, and what causes aggregate demand to fall and increase, to fall and rise, as well as the different components of calculating aggregate demand. Hope this video is helpful, and hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.